Hello dear students, welcome to Bajirao Ias Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. So like every day, today also we have very important news articles, and those news articles are very important for both prelims and mains examination, and we will try to understand all those news articles from the multiple perspectives so that it can be useful in your exam in a best possible manner. So let's try to solve yesterday given practice question. The question was, Operation Indravati is an initiative that was being launched to evacuate Indian citizens from which of the following countries? So the options are Sudan, Russia, Haiti and Cuba. So the correct answer for this question is Haiti. See, whenever India has been planning to launch such an initiative, India calls that particular initiative with a unique name. For example, Operation Ganga, to evacuate stranded Indian students in Ukraine and Russia. So in a similar sense, or in a similar way, the government of India has launched this particular Operation Indravati to evacuate Indian citizens from a country called Haiti. So Haiti is located in a Caribbean region. So Operation Indravati is an ongoing evacuation mission. So that was launched by the government of India. So this particular mission is focused on rescuing nationals from Haiti. Okay, so if you look at this country Haiti, it is a country which is located in the Caribbean region. So this Caribbean nation has been facing a lot of conflict and tensions. Particularly, it has been grappling with a widespread gang violence and even the political instability also. So because of this reason, the government felt the need to evacuate Indians from a country called Haiti. So apart from that, operation is named after a river called Indravati. Now Indravati river is a tributary of river Godavari. Okay, so this is a tributary of the river Godavari. So apart from that, it also aims to ensure the safety and well-being of all Indians who are living in a country called Haiti and evacuation of all the stranded citizens from or Indian nationals from a country called Haiti. So today's practice question is, consider the following statements or consider the following countries. The countries given here are Kenya, Tanzania, Botswana and Mozambique. So how many of the above nations share borders with the Indian Ocean? So which of the following nations have been sharing the borders with the Indian Ocean? Now if you look at the African continent, Indian Ocean locates on the eastern side of the African continent. So therefore you have to locate which of the countries are actually sharing its borders with the Indian Ocean. Now African continent is very important, especially the physical geography questions from Africa have been asked by UPSC regularly. So therefore you need to be very careful whenever you are attempting these questions. So how many of the above nations share borders with the Indian Ocean? Only 1, only 2, only 3 and only 4. So please answer this question in the comment section. I'll give you the correct answer in the tomorrow's session. So let's try to discuss the first very important news article. So that important news article is a campaigning in the name of religion. Campaigning in the name of religion. Okay, so this is very important because India is very often known as a multi-diverse country. Multi-diverse in the sense India has a multiple religions. People of multiple religions are living in India, and at the same time now we are approaching or very near to the next general elections. So there is a probability that the political parties and the politicians very often use religion to incite to incite the communal harmony among the people, and at the same time the political parties and the political leaders very often use religion as a tool to mobilize voters and polarize voters on these communal lines. So because of that reason, what are the guidelines of the Supreme Court with respect to political leaders using this communal aspects, or political leaders using religion as a tool to mobilize voters, playing vote bank politics that revolves around the religion? And at the same time, what is the Supreme Court's judgment and what is the law that has been prohibiting the use of religion in the campaigning? And at the same time, what are the guidelines that are being provided by the Election Commission of India with respect to avoiding the use of religion to mobilize voters and incite to violence? Now we will understand understand this in a detailed manner, and it is also very significant because the elections are coming. So now why it is in news? It is in news because of a few reasons. One is recently the Bharatiya Janata Party has lodged a complaint against a Tamil Nadu leader. So the complaint was lodged in Election Commission of India against a prominent opposition party leader. So what was the context? The context was that particular leader from South has been hurting the Hindu sentiments through making a derogatory remarks on Shakti. Okay, so first the Bharatiya Janata Party has filed a complaint against a leader with the Election Commission of India. Okay, why? Because the opposition leader have made derogatory remarks against Shakti and thereby inciting the sentiments of Hindus. So in reverse, this particular opposition leader has filed a complaint against Prime Minister Narendra Modi with the Election Commission of India, that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is also very often using religion in his campaigning. So this is the context. This is why this particular issue or news article is in news. Now let's try to understand what we are going to discuss in this particular article. So we have certain issues that we are going to deal with it in today's lecture. Firstly, we will understand what are the provisions that prohibit the use of religion that are being provided by the Representation of People Act. So what this Representation of People Act 1951 says in this regard. Secondly, we will also understand what does Model Code of Conduct says on this use of religion. So we all know that the Model Code of Conduct is being issued by the Election Commission of India to provide a level playing field between all the candidates and all political parties. So it also prevents the use of caste, religion and region and language to incite the sentiments of the voters. And at the same time, the history of implementation of the Representative People Act and Model Code of Conduct, and there was a judgment of the Supreme Court in this regard, that is use of religion for the purpose of mobilizing voters. So the judgment was Adhiram Singh versus C.D. Komachan. Okay, so this judgment was delivered by the Supreme Court in 2017. So we will also understand the judgment, and in future what the political parties have to do in order to refrain themselves from involving religion in the political issues. Now let's discuss the first very important aspect, that is Representation of People Act 1951. So this particular legislation regulate all electoral matters in India. So we all know about that. For example, conducting elections, eligibility criteria of different candidates and disqualification of the candidates. So all those issues are being dealt by the Representation of People Act 1951. So this particular Representation of People Act 1951, what does it says? There's a section called section 123 subclause 3. Okay, so section 123 clause 3 says of the Representation of People Act says that any candidate or any political party who is appeals to vote or refrain from voting on the ground of his religion, race, caste, community, language is considered as the corrupt electoral practice. I hope you have understood this. So the Representation of People Act section 123 clause 3 says that any person who is appealing in the name of religion, caste, race, community and language, that particular behavior is considered as a electoral practice, corrupt electoral practice, firstly. And secondly, there is another section 123 3A, and this particular section also denouncing any attempt by a candidate promoting the feelings of enmity or hatred among the citizens on different grounds. So the feeling of enmity and hatred can be encouraged among the citizens by different activities. For example, they can use religion, they can use caste, they can also use region, language, race, all those things. So this particular section 123 3A has also been prohibiting the use of all those things to promote the enmity among different groups and different individuals. So they also come under the corrupt electoral practices. Corrupt electoral practices, because the edifice of democracy cannot be built on these corrupt electoral practices. Elections must be free and fair. So the Representation of People Act has been further provided that anyone who found guilty of any offense or any corrupt electoral practices so can be debarred from contesting elections for a maximum period of 6 years. For example, I've already told you that the Representation of People Act 123 clause 3 and 123 clause 3A have provided for certain electoral offences, and if any individual found guilty of these electoral malpractices, so he would be debarred from contesting elections up to a period of 6 years. So next, we will also understand about the Model Code of Conduct. Now, what exactly is the Model Code of Conduct? So Model Code of Conduct is considered as a guidance or certain guidelines that are being provided by the Election Commission of India to political parties and the candidates. Okay, so it is actually a set of norms, a set of rules which have evolved with the consensus of all the political parties. Now, one thing that you need to understand with respect to the Model Code of Conduct, that Model Code of Conduct does not have any statutory backing or legal backing. Rather, it is evolved in India through a political consensus, and these are a set of rules and a set of guidelines for the political parties as well as candidates during the elections, right? So though MCC, the Model Code of Conduct, have no statutory backing, okay, so it have no statutory backing, rather it has grown in strength as a result of the Election Commission of India's strict enforcement. So the Model Code of Conduct is known for strict enforcement by the Election Commission of India, and it has gained a lot of importance in recent past because the MCC is strictly implemented by the Election Commission of India. And please also understand that the Model Code of Conduct is started, the Election Commission of India started to implement the Model Code of Conduct since 1990s. So followed by that, the Model Code of Conduct also provides for there shall be no appeal to caste, community, race, language and religion. Right? So these things cannot be used to mobilize voters to gain something from the vote bank politics. So it is strictly prohibited under the Model Code of Conduct. So if any candidate violates the very same Model Code of Conduct, then in fact, there will be certain punishments that are being imposed by the Election Commission of India. So in fact, churches, mosques, temples and other places of worship shall not be used for a forum for election propaganda. Okay, so they cannot be used for election propaganda. Now what happens here when you use temples, mosques, churches for election propaganda? Then of course you are bringing religion into politics, right? So you are bringing religion into politics when you are using the places of worship for your election campaigning. So therefore the Model Code of Conduct also prevents this particular thing. So after that, when we talk about the history of implementation of Representation of People Act and Model Code of Conduct, so we need to keep in mind few things. Firstly, there have been innumerable instances. Okay, so there are a lot of instances in the past where different parties, different political leaders have blatantly violated and in fact appealed voters on these lines. For example, they have used religion to appeal voters. There are a lot of instances, and they have used region to appeal voters, and race, language, all those things are being used by different political parties and different candidates. So their ultimate objective is winning elections. So in order to win elections, they are adopting these corrupt means, they are adopting these unethical means. However, these unethical and corrupt means were prohibited by different legislations, Supreme Court guidelines, and at the same time the Model Code of Conduct. So however, the only notable leader who was convicted for the violation of this particular or use of religion for inciting violence, he was the Bal Thackeray of Shiv Sena in the year 1995. So he was convicted by the Supreme Court for using violence for the purpose of elections. So the Election Commission of India on several other occasions also bars many candidates from campaigning because they are using religion uh, because the model code of conduct, when it starts enforcing, the Election Commission of India starts enforcing the model code of conduct, so it of course bars several leaders from campaigning, because they are actively using religion, caste, and religion, race, so all those things. Okay, so this is a brief history of implementation of Representation of People Act and the Model Code of Conduct. However, I can say that even though people have been blatantly using those things as a tools to mobilize voters, the punishment are rarely given for the people who are violating these rules. Now, what has Supreme Court ruled in Abhiram Singh versus CD, Komchen? In the year 2017, Supreme Court, a 7-judge bench of the Supreme Court, that is a constitution bench of the Supreme Court, has delivered a judgment with a majority of 3-4-3. Okay, so in this particular judgment, the Supreme Court has held that candidates shall not appeal to the voters. Okay, very clear that candidates shall not appeal to the voters on the basis of not just his or her religion, but also that of the voters. For example, imagine an individual, a member of a political party who is contesting elections, and he goes to a place where one particular community is in majority, and he starts appealing for that particular community, in order to gain votes. Okay, so appeasement of different religions. So therefore, the Supreme Court is very clear on this, that no person or no candidate, no political party should not appeal voters on the basis of his caste, not just his caste, but also the caste of the voters. And apart from that, there's also a provision in the Representation of People Act, section 123, clause 3, that we have already discussed, that the Supreme Court has used this particular clause as a purposive interpretation. Okay, so what does purposive interpretation actually means? So the Supreme Court, under the purposive interpretation, held that the elections to Parliament and state legislature are actually a secular exercise. So secular exercise, that essentially means religion will not have any role in the election process. So elections are completely a secular process, and at the same time, the constitutional ethos, these constitutional ethos have actually forbids the mixing of religion with the secular functions of the state. So when you mix the religion with the secular functions of the state, what happens? The state will essentially lose its secular character. Okay, so that is against the basic structure of the constitution, that is against the constitutional ethos. In fact, secularism is one of the basic features of the Indian constitution. So therefore, the Supreme Court has also linked the secular functions of the state with the religious, with the politics. It clearly says that the politics should not be mixed with the religious functions of or secular functions of the state. So apart from that, religion should remain as a matter of personal faith. So you should keep your religion to your personal matters, and don't bring religion into politics, and don't appeal voters also in the name of religion. And this is what the Supreme Court has clearly said in Abhiram Singh versus E.D. Komchen. Now, what should be the way forward? What the political parties and candidates have to do in this regard? So how can they adopt more ethical behavior when it comes to appealing towards appealing to voters? First and foremost, that we need to understand, there are a lot of political parties, and political parties also field different candidates from different constituencies. First, they have to focus on the legitimate issues or legitimate concerns of the citizens. For example, providing infrastructure for the citizens, providing affordable public transportation, ensuring drinking water for the citizens, providing housing. So the political parties and the candidates should focus on the legitimate issues, whether it is the opposition or the ruling party, rather than using these divisive tools. So when I say divisive tools, for example, religion is considered as a divisive tool, caste is considered as a divisive tool, language, race, all those things are divisive tools. So instead of using or utilizing those tools, you just focus on the legitimate issues so that are being prevalent. And after that, any appeal in the name of religion only results in the polarization of India's multi-religious society. So no doubt that India is a diverse country and India is a multi-religious society, and if you start appealing the voters in the name of religion, so it will lead to the large scale polarization of India's multi-religious society, and that will not be good for the peace, tolerance and all those things in the India. So disturbing the secular fabric of its polity and clear violation, it will also leads to the clear violation of law. So these practices should ideally be avoided in order to ensure politics and religion are not actually mixed up, right? So actually the author has been clearly suggesting that these practices, the practices such as using religion in the politics, using any other divisive tools in the politics, should be avoided in politics, so that you can ensure that politics and religion are not mixed up and the politics and the secular functions of the state are actually different. So however, the primary responsibilities actually lies with the political parties and the candidates themselves. They have to take the larger responsibility, and they should not use religion as a divisive tool to further polarize the multi-diverse society in India. So however, the Election Commission of India and courts should devise mechanisms. Okay, both Election Commission of India and in fact the Supreme Court and the legislature such as Parliament, they have to devise new mechanisms. So those new mechanisms can hold individuals accountable for using religion in the politics, and at the same time it will not lead to the marginalization and polarization of different sections in our country. And at the same time, if anyone violates these provisions which are provided in the Representation of People Act, a swift action can be taken for the violation of those things. This is what the author has been suggesting with respect to the Representation of People Act and using religion in the politics in order to appeal voters. Okay, so let's discuss the next very important editorial, that is with respect to China. So China want to be superpower. So we all know that China has been growing at a faster pace. It has grown at a faster pace, and in fact it has been challenging the US hegemony. It has been challenging US hegemony across the world. So therefore, in this context, we will understand what are the shortcomings that China has been facing. Yes, China has aspirations to grow a global superpower. It also has aspirations to fulfill the vacuum that is being created by US in several regions such as South Asia, Middle East. So therefore, in order to fill the vacuum, still China has been facing several drawbacks, several issues, and that is what the author has pointed out. So first and foremost, we will understand the context why this particular editorial has been given. So in our previous lectures, I have already discussed with you that China mediated between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Okay, so Iran and Saudi Arabia considered as rivals, and in order to make sure that these two countries become friends, or in order to reduce the tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia, China has mediated. Now it has become 1 year since China has mediated between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So amidst the overshadowing conflict, so please also understand the Gaza and Israel conflict has also been taking in the Middle East, and this Iran and Saudi Arabia are also located in the Middle East. So we all know that this particular peace deal or China mediated deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia is actually overshadowed by the conflict in Gaza, and at the same time a subsequent strain in the regional political dynamics in the Persian Gulf as well. However, this is the first anniversary of China mediated peace accord between Saudi Arabia and Iran, right? So this is a first peace accord between Saudi Arabia and Iran, because that was signed in March 2023 and it went relatively unnoticed. So despite China mediated a peace deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia, because of those regional conflicts, it is largely unnoticed. The role of China or this particular peace deal has we can say that this has not resulted in a significant progress in the ties of Iran and Saudi Arabia. So the diplomatic focus and international attention remain captivated by this particular Israel and Gaza conflict. This has underscored the entanglement of various global actors and their vested interests in the region. So this is the actual context. Because of that reason, the author has given this particular article. Now, first and foremost, we will understand the Chinese mediation efforts. So there are conflicts and tensions in different parts of the world. However, now China has been interested in playing a larger role, and it is also coming up with the mediation plans between those countries which have been at the conflict. Now, first and foremost, they wanted to portray the positive role of Xi Jinping. Okay, so because the detente means that lowering the tensions between two sovereign nations, okay, reducing or declining tensions between two countries. So the detente between Saudi Arabia and Iran actually portraying or actually portrayed by Chinese media as in fact, it has been portraying the positive role that is being played by the Chinese president Xi Jinping. Okay, so and it also conveying the fact that China's advocacy for the peace in the Middle East. So apart from that, China has been very frequently endorsing the international mediation organization. So China, along with the support of other countries such as Algeria, Pakistan and Sudan, so they want to establish international mediation organization. Okay, so they are aiming to leverage the Belt and Road Initiative. So that is Chinese infrastructure project, and China has also getting support from these countries to set up international mediation organization, and China wanted to further enhance its geopolitical influence, right? So it also wanted to further enhance its geopolitical influence through the Belt and Road Initiative and the international mediation organization. And after that, China has been very often adopting a cautious approach with respect to different conflicts. So, for example, China is virtually silent on the Red Sea crisis. So, Red Sea crisis, where Houthi rebels of Yemen have been frequently attacking ships, right? So Houthi rebels from Yemen, they have been attacking ships in the Red Sea. However, China is strategically silent on this particular Red Sea crisis, and China has been adopting a cautious approach with respect to this particular issue. And apart from that, China has also been involving in the regional mediation. As I have already discussed, that China's involvement in this regional mediation are actually reflecting strategic interest in safeguarding the economic interests. Okay, so it reflects strategic interest in safeguarding its economic interests, while at the same time projecting an image as a responsible international actor. So every country looks to portray itself as a responsible international actor. However, China has also been doing this. So it has been carefully avoiding few things, and at the same time it has also been taking care of or looking at few other things. So they are primarily driven by Chinese strategic as well as economic interests. And after that, there are certain geopolitical aims and challenges that China has been facing in this regard. In this particular multipolar world, China has been facing few challenges, and China also has certain geopolitical aims. First and foremost, it wanted to position itself as an alternative to the Western interventionism. Right? For example, Western interventionism essentially means that in any conflict or in any crisis like situation, West comes into that particular region. So therefore, in the Middle East also we have seen a lot of tensions and a lot of a crisis, and it is a very volatile region. So therefore, the Chinese mediation role is considered as aspiring. China has been actually aspiring to increasing its geopolitical weight, and at the same time it wanted to challenge the long-standing American influence. Now, if you look at the Middle East, it is very often known for a huge American influence in the region, right? So now China wanted to come in into the Middle East, and it also wanted to further increase its influence, because Middle East is very important region. It is very important for countries' energy security and its strategic location. So traditionally, Middle East has a huge influence of United States. However, now China wanted to come in, and China also wanted to increase its influence in Middle East. So that is an issue. And after that, China has also been adopting an approach where a selective support for the Palestinian cause. Right? So it has been selectively supporting the Palestinian cause, and it has not extending a full support to the Palestinian cause. So this particular selective support to the Palestinian cause, and in fact its reluctance, okay, so in fact Chinese reluctance to condemn Hamas. So China has not condemned the attack on Hamas. So that has been demonstrating the challenges in its mediation diplomacy, and it has also been navigating the complex regional dynamics also. Right? So China, it is said that it has been navigating the complex regional dynamics. So because of that reason, China has not condemned the attack of Hamas on Israel. Okay, so after that, it has also been facing several challenges in its mediation diplomacy. So please understand, I have already told you that China has mediated between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So China has been following a cautious approach with respect to mediation. Okay. So China has been following a cautious approach with respect to China, and in fact a limited involvement in the high stake conflicts. For example, if any conflict which has a higher stakes, China has been very cautious, and China has not been involving in those things because it wanted to averse the existing risks that are being involved. Okay, so it wanted to averse those risks, thereby not involving the higher stake conflicts. It has been following the risk aversive strategy. Right, so it has been following the risk aversive strategy, and in fact there's an absence of viable alternatives to the Western centric policies in the region. Now see, please understand, when China has been avoiding the high stake conflicts in the region, so it failed to provide an alternative to the Western centric policies in the Middle East, because it is not involving all the conflicts, and at the same time it is very cautious about the conflicts in the Middle East. So because of that reason, China is considered as, it is not a viable alternative for the Western centric policies in the region. So it is not able to place a viable alternative. So after that, Chinese role as a utilitarian superpower. Now in this context, we will understand what exactly is the utilitarianism. So utilitarianism actually means greater good for the greater number of people. Greater good for the greater number of people. So now what China wanted to do? China wanted to ensure greater good for itself in the region. So therefore it focused on displacement of American hegemony. So it wanted to displace the American hegemony. As I have already told you, if you look at Middle East has a huge influence of the West, huge influence of the US. So therefore it wanted to displace the American hegemony in the Middle East. And Chinese approach to the regional mediation underscores its aspirations to displace American hegemony without fully committing to replace it. So it doesn't want to fully replace US in the Middle East, rather it has aspirations to displace American hegemony. Right? So, and at the same time it wanted to position itself as a soft hegemon rather than an aggressive or assertive superpower in the region. So secondly, the perception of hollow mediation efforts. So China has been adopting the mediation efforts, but it is said that the mediation efforts of China are not impactful. Okay, so they are very hollow in nature. So despite the economic clout that China has and its strategic interests that are being involved in the Middle East, Chinese mediation efforts are actually perceived as hollow, and they lack the substantive solutions. Okay, so the Chinese mediation efforts are not that much impactful in creating the larger good. So therefore, we can say that the Chinese mediation efforts are actually not providing any solutions to global geopolitical flashpoints such as Israel-Palestine conflict. Now, Israel-Palestine conflict is also another major issue, and China has not come up with any mediation plan because it has been following the cautious approach and it has been avoiding such flashpoints which have higher stakes. So because of that reason, we can say that the China has been adopting the risk aversive strategy. Okay, so after that we should also talk about the utilitarian status as a superpower. So Chinese role in the Middle East actually highlights the utilitarian status. Okay, so it actually highlighting the utilitarian status of a superpower, because now it remains a hedging option for regional actor. For example, imagine UAE, Saudi Arabia. So they just hedging China. They are hedging China for US, and China still remains a hedging option. Okay, so but still US has a considerable influence in the Middle East. And at the same time, China has also been grappling with several challenges in offering other alternatives to the Western-centric policies. So these are some of the drawbacks that still China has been facing in the Middle East. So in fact, it wanted to become a superpower, but still it has a lot of shortcomings, and China must overcome those shortcomings to aspire to that particular position or to replace the US or West hegemony in the Middle East. So that's all in this article. Now let's try to understand the next very important news article, that is water crisis in Bengaluru is actually linked to the urbanization in Kodagu. So please understand, Bengaluru has been facing one of the worst water crisis, right? So it has been facing water crisis, and there are a lot of reasons that are being responsible for this water crisis. So if we can talk about those reasons, for example, poor urban planning, and lack of rainwater harvesting structures, and in fact exploitation of water resources, and contamination of those existing water resources. All these challenges have led to the large-scale water crisis in Bengaluru. So Bengaluru has been facing one of its worst water crisis. So however, experts have been associating the Bengaluru water crisis with the urbanization in the Kodagu. So why? We will understand this in a detailed manner. Okay, so there was a Save Kodagu and Save Kaveri campaign. So this particular campaign has said that, or a group of people who run this particular campaign have said that the reasons for water shortage in Bengaluru is because of a rampant and unchecked commercial land conversion and urbanization in Kodagu. So please understand, this Kodagu is considered as a catchment area, for river Kaveri. Okay, so this is a catchment area for the river Kaveri. Now catchment area is actually the area where the rainfall from different regions ultimately drains into the river Kaveri. Okay, so this is known as the catchment area. Okay, rainfall from all the sources ultimately drains into a river Kaveri, and this is known as a catchment area, and Kodagu is known as the catchment area of river Kaveri. However, what has been happening? There has been an increased urbanization and increased commercial activities. So that have changed the ecological character of the catchment area called Kodagu, because Kodagu's urbanization will lead to the concrete jungles, and these concrete jungles would not have adequate options to seep the groundwater. Okay, so urbanization and excessive use of water by the people of Kodagu, all these factors have been leading to the poor flow in the river Kaveri. So the experts have also been suggesting that a water shortage in Bengaluru is associated with the rampant and unchecked commercial land conversion and urbanization that has been taking place in Kodagu. So they are also strongly opposing giving no objection certificates, the NOC certificates, no objection certificates for such conversion in the district which is a birthplace of the river Kaveri. Now Kodagu is the birthplace of river Kaveri, and no objection certificates are being given by the local government units for commercial units, for the commercial activities, and even land conversion. So for all these purposes, the no objection certificate is being given by the local bodies. Okay, so experts have been strongly opposing giving these no objection certificates for these commercial activities, and at the same time the land conversion activities that are taking place in a larger scale in Kodagu district, and that is the birthplace of river Kaveri, and that has been impacting the flow, the levels of flow in river Kaveri, and at the same time that has also resulted in a serious water crisis in Bengaluru city. So in fact it is said that the Kodagu district, a Kodagu catchment area of river Kaveri, is the principal catchment of Kaveri, and that actually provides 70% of the water to 130 lakh Bengalurians. Okay, so 70% of the water is being provided by the Kodagu itself. Okay, Kodagu catchment area alone provides 70% of the water for 13 million Bengaluru people. However, in recent times, land conversion has become a serious issue. So with this land conversion, the Gram Panchayats should not issue the no objection certificates for the land conversion into the commercial activities. The land is being converted into commercial activities. So that further increases the population, and population increase in the Kodagu district, they will use more water resources, exploitation of the water resources and contamination of those water resources, thereby lesser flows in the Kaveri river, and at the same time Bengaluru will face a permanent water crisis. So therefore they are opposing Gram Panchayats issuing these no objection certificates for commercial activities. And apart from that, this should be followed by placing a moratorium on the further expansion of Bengaluru city. So we all know that the Bengaluru city has been facing the water shortage. So if we further expand the Bengaluru city, it further increases the population to another 10 million or something like that. Okay, so further increase in the temperatures, further increase in the population in Bengaluru would further exaggerate the water stress. So therefore experts have been suggesting that there should be a moratorium on the further expansion of the Bengaluru city, and after that, if there was a continuous growth of Bengaluru and destruction of Kodagu's landscape, it would be a classic case of burning the candle at the both ends, and this is what the experts have been suggesting. Okay, so expansion of Bengaluru and rapid urbanization of Kodagu, now that will be disastrous. Okay, so that will be disaster because people in Bengaluru will not have adequate water, and at the same time urbanization in Kodagu district will lead to the excess use of water. Okay, so that will have a detrimental and disastrous impact. So in fact we can say that Kaveri is considered as a lifeline not only for Bengaluru, but it is also a lifeline for the farmers of the Mandya and people of Mysore, right? And after that, increase in the population of Kodagu. So present population 6 lakh population in Kodagu district. So if population increases to 10 lakh or more owing to the proliferation of layouts and colonies. Okay, so if population further increases, they use more water resources, and more water resources means that the catchment would not be able to supply adequate and enough water for the river Kaveri. So in this case, if this happens, there will be a failure of rains in the district. In case of a failure of rains in this particular district, and drought-like conditions would prevail, and water shortage also takes place, and the government would invoke the National Disaster Act. Okay, so the experts have been saying that if the government invokes the National Disaster Act, the governments would not allow people to use the existing bore wells. Okay, and in fact the water tanks also, because the coffee plantations have also been exploiting the water resources. If in case government invokes the National Disaster Act, so government will not allow people to use the borewells and water tanks, and thereby the farmers will not be able to irrigate their fields also, so thereby creating a large scale water stress and water crisis. So therefore the experts have been suggesting that since Kodagu is a catchment area, a population of the Kodagu must be within the control, and at the same time the local bodies should not issue the no objection certificates for the commercial activities in Kodagu, so that very often comes with excessive exploitation of the water resources. And at the same time, in order to meet the water shortage or water crisis in Bengaluru, we need to stop the further expansion of the Bengaluru city. So these are the interventions that are being suggested by the experts in order to solve this particular crisis. And after that, we will also briefly discuss about a recent Robusta coffee variety or coffee variety price. It actually touches all-time high amid global shortage. Okay. Now, if you look at India, in India, only 4 states, only very few states cultivate coffee: Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and parts of Odisha, and a few states in Northeast. So the major coffee varieties include Robusta and Excelsa and Liberica and Arabica. So these are major coffee varieties, and if you look at India, we can find Robusta and Arabica coffee varieties. However, it requires certain climatic conditions in order to grow coffee. Because of that reason, coffee is not found in all parts of India, because it is also like wheat. Wheat cannot be cultivated in southern parts of India. In a similar sense, it requires certain ideal climate. So the climate is hot and humid climate with 15 to 28 degrees Celsius. And at the same time, coffee requires dry weather at the time of ripening of the berries. Secondly, when we talk about the rainfall, it should receive at least 150 to 200 millimeters of 250 millimeters of annual rainfall. So location where the coffee is being cultivated: rainforests of the Western Ghats, coffee is heavily cultivated. And states, Karnataka produces the highest amount of coffee, followed by Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Andhra Pradesh. So these 4 states are top coffee producing states. Now, if you look at India's position in the total coffee production, India is the 6th largest producer of coffee. So in fact, 65 to 70% of India's coffee is exported, and Brazil is the largest producer. Why Brazil is the largest producer? Because Brazil have all these climatic conditions: hot and humid climate, dry weather, and higher annual rainfall, and in fact large presence of rainforests in Brazil. Because of that reason, Brazil has been contributing for the highest production of coffee. Now, if you can discuss this particular news article, so the farm gate price of new Robusta coffee coffee berries has actually touched a record 170 kilograms. Okay, so in fact, when you compare this particular coffee price 172 rupees per kg with the last year prices, it is just 115 kilograms. Okay, so during the last year same period. So the harvest is almost complete now, and there has been a huge shortfall in the supply at the global level. So because of that reason, there has been a significant increase in the prices of Robusta coffee variety this year, so thereby increasing the coffee prices. So in fact, if you look at India produces 2 major varieties of coffee, so that is Robusta and Arabica. Now in these 2 coffee varieties, India cultivates highest amounts of Robusta. Okay, so these are the states which cultivate the coffee variety, and at the same time, Karnataka tops the list with highest production of coffee, followed by Kerala and Tamil Nadu, and then Andhra Pradesh. Okay, so that's all in this article. And if you really like a video, if you really like our work, please like the video and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.